Hi, and welcome to this brief orientation video for understanding the Veusz program that we'll be using in this course. Basically, at this point, I've assumed you installed Veusz and have it open for the first time, and so we're looking at the view that I'm greeted with the first time I open this on my program, or on my computer. So let's just get started looking at everything that can happen here and maybe how we can make it a little bit easier to look at. So we'll start at the top left, where we have a standard menu where we can have control over the files and editing this file, control over how we view it, inserting things like additional images, inserting data and controlling the data we're going to work with, and then looking at how we control the tools that we have available and what they look like on the screen, and then help, although I'll say the documentation for this particular program is a little sparse online. So you'll be better off maybe just asking questions of me. Underneath this toolbar, we have a bunch of buttons that also give us control over aspects of the program. All these buttons are also covered in the toolbar up here, but it's nice to know what these buttons do in case you want to use them to manipulate data without having to go through the different menus. Right now we're just going to briefly introduce the different groups of buttons without covering them in detail. We can do that later when we start working up data. So let's get started looking at this. The first at the top left are just simple buttons to create new worksheets, to control the files that they're saved in, saving, printing, and exporting. The next buttons to the right are buttons that help us control data, how we import data from a file on a disk, which is how we're going to do this mostly. We can also edit data, import data directly into the program by typing it in a spreadsheet-like application. We can get remote data, filter data, and then also refresh data from the file that we've read before. And so it's going to be this green arrow button and this blue disk button that are going to be the most useful for us in this course. The last set of buttons on the top row have to deal with examining data once we've plotted something. So if we've made a line plot, something like this, these allow us to select how we interact with that data, either selecting individual data points or maybe zooming in on particular regions of the data. And this is something we'll get to again when we start really working up data. The lower bar contains many of the options for controlling graphs, such as making new pages, making grids of graphs, inserting a new set of axes, inserting individual axes. And then the next several buttons control inserting different types of plots, scatter plots, bar charts, lines that are fit to data, arbitrary functions, box and whisker plots, contour plots and gradient plots. We also have the ability to put in a key, put in labels, and then several other buttons that are more advanced than what we're going to potentially use in this course, but you can explore if you like. The last set of buttons are to help us manipulate the instances of data and graphs that we have, where we can copy them or paste them. We could move them about. We can reorder them using the up and down arrows. We can delete them, and we can also rename them within the file structure inside this program. And that covers the buttons. So what's next then is to cover the windows. There are 5 different windows that we're going to look at, actually 6, but one of them is hidden right now, and we'll uncover that in a moment. We have a window in the top left for editing our data. We have a window below it for controlling the properties of the plot that we're working on. The window in the middle actually shows us the data of interest and the graph that we're working on. Over on the right, we have the ability to look at the data files that we're reading our data from. And something else, the hidden window down here at formatting, lets us control also the formatting of our graphs, which is where we're going to spend a large amount of time in this class. You can access the formatting window simply by clicking, and now we've switched from looking at data to looking at formatting, and I'm going to go back to data now. The last window we can see here is the console. The console gives us feedback on errors, like if we wanted to fit a plot, or if we formatted something incorrectly. It's also going to give us details of fits, which are going to be useful for us later on. But for now, the console is not terribly useful. So let's start by looking at this console window and making it smaller so that everything else becomes a little bit bigger. The way we do this is we find the top section of the console window, and you can see my cursor has just changed, and then I click and drag down the same way that you would resize any window. And I'm going to make it as small as I possibly can. For now, we're done with the console window, and if you don't want it at all, you can always just click X to get rid of it. But I'm going to leave it up for now. The next thing that I want to address is the window where it's actually showing us the data. And what you'll notice is that we start at 0.4 and go to 1. Clearly we're missing some of this view. And you can see that I can actually scroll side to side and up to down in order to see this whole plot, which is going to be pretty annoying if we had to do that all the time. So what I like to do is resize this window, or the data inside this window, so I can see everything. And the easiest way for me to do this is to go up to View in the toolbar, select it, come down and say Zoom to Page, and that will automatically fit the plot inside this window. You'll see that the plot is not wide enough to fill up the entire view, but that's okay. We can adjust that later if we want. The last thing I want to do is make it so that I can see both the formatting and the data views at the same time. This is similar to what we can see on the left, where I can see that we have both properties and editing windows open at the same time. So what I want to do on the right is have that happen. What I'm going to do then is simply grab this formatting pane, click, hold, and pull it out. And now what you can see is I can move it around into different areas. I want it where it was, but just in the top. And so I'm going to move it back so that it's highlighted in blue. This is telling me this is where I'm going to put it. I'm going to move it up so that until the point where now it looks like there's going to be two boxes. And when I let go, that's what I have, formatting and data. And then I'm simply going to grab this middle section and pull it down as small as it'll go. And now what I have available is formatting and data, both available. And now all the windows that we're going to be using in this course are visible all at the same time. Okay, I think that is the end of this orientation. Now at least you know where all the windows and buttons are, even if we don't know exactly what they do yet. What we'll be doing the rest of this class as we learn to use views is examining each of these panes where we can understand what we can do to the graph within them, starting in the next screencast with understanding how to take data, save it, and then import it into views so that we have access to it and can make plots from it.